Good morning, everyone.
I have to tell you something.
Okay,
Very interesting.
good to see you all here. I guess we all survived the hurricane, and we're back at it, doing our thing here in the Delray Alliance. So I welcome you all here this morning, and if you all rise, we'll salute our flag. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Dr. Laurie, we have a big program today, so we're going to move right along. It's very interesting, and you all leave here smarter than when you came in. Okay, so I'm going to call on Stan Goodman. Stan, introduce our guest, please.
We're pleased to welcome the following guests, dignitaries, officers, to our meeting today. Please hold your applause until I'm finished. Steve Niffen, Deputy Sheriff. Linda Posnack, Kings Point. Sarah, also from GL Homes. Karen Brill, Palm Beach County School Board. Michelle Adams, Center State Bank. Laura Corey, Regional South Florida Water Management District Representative. Kimberly Hughes, Palm Beach Fire Rescue. Felicia Goldstein, Office of Congresswoman Lois Frankel. Howie Zimmerman, Palm Beach County Property Appraiser's Office. Dana Ackerman, Commissioner's Dave Kerner's Office. Rosemary Raymond, Lake Worth Drainage District. Jessica Salona, Senator Rader's Office. Clint Streicher, Legislative Aide to Senator Kevin Rader. Terry Mitzi, Senator Abruzzo's Office. Leslie Schreiberg, Sheriff Bradshaw's Office. Diana Johnson, Executive Administrator. Melissa Santoro, Legislative Assistant to Senator Jeff Clemens. Ed Saul, District Secretary Rep. Will Smith, Senator Jeff Clemens' Office. And I would also like to introduce Corporal, soon-to-be Sergeant, Rachel Gordon, on leave to visit from the Israeli Defense Forces.
As usual, we'll start out asking for reports from our, how about Lieutenant Laurie File? Laurie? You here?
I'm here.
Lieutenant File, there you are. Come on, Lieutenant.
I'm here, Bob.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hear me okay? I'm your stand-in since the captain's on vacation this week. We had a busy month, as you know, with Hurricane Irma. The Sheriff's Office, as we prepared for it, and afterwards going through the communities, making sure the residents were okay, and conducting damage assessments. We also sent, along with our partners at Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, we sent a lot of people down to the Keys to help. They were there for several days, so that was a big undertaking, and they did a great job. During the hurricane, we really didn't experience any looting here in our district. There was a little bit in other places in the county. We did experience several burglaries, car burglaries, as we usually do. They spike sometimes. We did have another weapon stolen out of a car. I know we've beaten that horse to death, but people are still leaving their valuables and sometimes a gun in their car. And an automatic weapon was stolen during the hurricane, one of those burglaries. But on a good note, those individuals they were under surveillance, so the task force and ATF were able to find them and recover the weapons. So that turned out to be a good ending to that. As you know, car burglaries, they continue to be our #1 crime here in the district, and so we keep asking to just spread the word, please. Tell people to get their valuables out of the car, keep it locked, because when they're unlocked, those are the cars they're going into. They just walk around, try the door handles. If they can get in, they're going to get in and take whatever's there. Most recently, last week, in the Polo Club, actually, Polo Club development, there were a few residential burglaries, and these individuals were also under surveillance by the task force, and they were an actual burglary ring that focused on high-end developments, high-end residences, and they were breaking into places from Tennessee all the way down here to Florida. And as they were leaving the Polo Club, they continued surveillance and eventually arrested all 3 of those individuals. So that's awesome. Awesome news.
How did they get into the Polo Club?
That I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what they focused on. They were professional burglars. So, and they had their eye on them for some time. So that worked out very well in our favor for a change. Overall, the statistics for our district are very good. We don't really have any big increases. When we do, of course, it's usually the car burglaries. So we would just ask you to please keep getting the word out for people to get those valuables out and keep their doors locked. And one last thing before I go, if I could ask all of you to just join me for a moment of silence for the folks in Las Vegas, the victims, families. So if we could just do that for a moment, please, before I leave. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay, Chief Kimberly Hood and Tony Keelan, come on up, Tony. Fire Rescue, new chief. Come on, Chief.
Good morning. I'm really happy to see everybody here and that everybody made it through the storm. It's unfortunate that we have to go through those times, but you know, it makes us more prepared for the next time that it comes. I think that all in all, everybody did a fantastic job with preparation. Our department was focused on our sustainability through the storm, being able to meet the needs of response after and bring our community into the recovery phase. I think that everybody, like I said, does great with the preparation. Sometimes after the storm, we have that cabin fever. We kind of get out way too early. Remember that there's a lot of hazards out there. The traffic signals aren't working. There's a lot of electric hazards. So try to give us time to clear those roadways and the responders to do their work. I myself was in the Keys for a couple of weeks. I'm on an all-hazard incident management team, and I have to say, coming back, I'm extremely grateful, and you remember everything that you take for granted. So know your neighbors, especially when we come into the storm times, know who's there so that you can be part of the recovery, and knowing that everybody's safe, who should be there, who has gone to their families, and that communication is essential after the storm. I'll see if Tony would like to say anything. And just remember, you know, to make sure that we have a non-perishables, the water, all your medication. If there are any needs for special needs shelters, that we do register for that early. And we're here hand in hand with you, bringing you through these hard times. And I thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Tony. We were very fortunate during this hurricane. We have to be very thankful. But several of our elected officials stood out during the hurricane by keeping in touch with Lori and giving her all the information and everything, which be coming out. We had a continuous flow of information on the internet. If you get our information, there were 3 information-packed mailed during the crucial days following the hurricane. The Alliance is acknowledging the following elected officials for what they did, and would like to give them a little proclamation from us to them, thanking them for what they did. And so I'm going to read them off, and if there are aides in the room, if they're not here, appreciate if the aides would come up and pick up the proclamation for them, okay? Congressman Lois Frankel. Here he comes. Well, for the Representative Emily Schlossberg. Somebody here from Emily Schlossberg's office. Here he comes. The man. Representative Joe Abruzzo. Hold one up, Leslie, Lori. Let me know see what it is. Here it is. Representative Bill Hager. Anybody Bill Hager? Oh, there it comes. Commissioner Steve Abrams. He's not here, okay. And of course, our own Commissioner Mary Lou Berger. She's here. Come on, Mary Lou. Here you are, Mary Lou. Yeah, move on. Okay.
This is bigger than me.
Okay, as long as you're here, Mary Lou, you can start off the speaking.
Morning, everyone. Good morning. Happy post-hurricane. Aren't we glad it's over? Also, I haven't had the opportunity to wish my Jewish constituency a happy and healthy. We were a little caught up with the hurricane things.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Chantal.
Thank you. I hear everybody talking this morning about the hurricane and about the preparations, et cetera, but what I want to talk to you about is what happens after the storm. And not to make light of anything, but if I do not hear the words power, electricity, cell phone service, debris pickup, and cable TV for the next 3 years, I will be a happy camper. I do invite you to call the office if you have any of those problems. We will get that information to the appropriate agency. For example, Palm Beach County did have a dedicated FPL contact person. She was working at the Emergency Operations Center, and I was there every day working with the employees who are kind enough to leave their families and come in and work through the hurricane and even after the hurricane. So I was able to give her the information, people's names, people's addresses, things such as that, so that she could get the appropriate trucks out there to help people. Sometimes it takes a while, especially if there's a live wire down somewhere and it's got buried under debris or it's buried under a telephone pole and it's a live wire. It takes time to find it. Once they find it, then they have to figure out how to fix it, how to get it back up there. So it does take time to do it, but please know that you have a conduit through my office to get to those agencies quicker than trying to call them yourself. We did get overloaded, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you. The other tip I want to give you for before the hurricane is, and by the way, anybody here have any damage to their homes, to their condos? I stayed in West Palm Beach through the hurricane, A, because I was closer to the Emergency Operations Center, and B, because my husband said, you need to stay here with me. And so I was not in the condo, but as soon as the storm let up, Sheriff Bradshaw was kind enough to send a deputy to my West Palm Beach house to pick me up and bring me down to Kings Point, because I had heard on the news that there was some roof damage. So a very nice deputy came and brought me down here. We went into Kings Point, we saw the damage. Fortunately, no one was hurt. No one was there when those 3 condos they're not sure what happened, but there was some roof damage that you could see. So before he brought me back up to West Palm Beach, I said to him, I'd like to go check my condo before I leave. And he said, okay. So we went over, we're at the door, I take the key, I put the key in the lock, turn it, open the door, and he and I are looking at my ceiling tile, my insulation, and roof parts all over my living room. And it was all wet. So apparently there was a leak, and the leak came through, collapsed it, and needless to say, I'm still not back in there. They're working on it and taking care of it for me. So I've had a lovely hurricane season this year. But we're not done. We still need to be prepared. And my husband actually gave me a really good tip. He went to Walmart and he bought home these little boxes. They're about this big, about that thick. They are collapsible water jugs. And he stored them under the bed and he said, there you go. Now, if a hurricane's coming, we pull it out, open the box, fill the jugs up with water, and we have water and we don't have to worry about it. Especially if the water is not bad. In our case here in District 5, I cannot remember when water utilities water ever went bad in a storm. They issue within a day an all clear that open the spigot, the water's going to come out and it's safe to drink. So we're very fortunate with our county water here. But that's just a little tip for you if you're going to be stuck for a couple of days. It's easy to stick under your bed, especially if you live in a condo and you're squished for space. Just fill them up with water, put the lid on them, bingo, you have water. And if you put them in the refrigerator, they'll stay cold for a while, even though your electricity goes out. Or, failing that, you could put ice cubes in the freezer, make ice cubes, put them in a Ziploc bag, and store them in the freezer, and they'll keep for a few days to give you something to make your liquids cooler. So I won't take any more of your time, but be vigilant. We still have to get into November before the season is over. Fingers crossed we don't have to worry about it, but we still need to remember that there still could be a storm on the way, and we have to remember that every year. So I love you, God bless you all, I'm glad you're all safe, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we've started something that we're giving updates on the community and the development update. There's been a lot of talk about the ag reserve, and we picked out some interesting facts here. At this point, there are 4 assisted living facilities are planned for West End Delray. That's what we get now. They're not building apartment houses, they're building assisted living facilities. They're all over the place. 3 of which are in the ag reserve, even though some people believe that those things are not supposed to be there. They are there, and for the better. One's on the corner of Sims Road and Lake Ida. The information will be sent out in the next Alliance newsletter. Updated information on 2 other projects in the agricultural reserve will also be included. We're going to try and, with our newsletter, try and keep you up to date on what's going on. You have a blue sheet of paper there. It's a lot of interesting statistics. It tells about what has been in the past and how and what was done by the commissioners in regard to the agriculture reserve. They allowed, as you read it, you'll see that they were allowed construction for assisted living facilities. One of them, the other one was residential. There also was a building going on with the new commercial aspects of it. And so there's a lot going on in the ag reserve. I just want to tell you that Lori and I and the Alliance Board keep very close tabs on what's going on there. We try to judge what's really worthwhile, what will be aid to the people living in there, and even us who drive in there for the marketplace or whatever. And so we try to be moving along with the times, allow what's needed there. It's hard to say nothing to be there. We have people there, hundreds and hundreds of homes. They need a cleaner, they need a restaurant, they need a doctor. And so we watch out for that and try and approve those items which we feel will feed the need, fill the need of the people who are living there or those who are coming. Because there's a lot more houses coming than the average. And so you'll hear it all as time goes on, and as we get closer to it, a lot of those things are in the works and haven't been filed yet, so I'm not going to be able to speak about them. But when they're filed, we'll come back here and tell you what they're doing there. I think with that, I'm going to call our sponsor for this morning, Central State Bank, Martha Magna. Are you here, Martha? Come on up. Martha would like to say a few words. They're a strong supporter of the Alliance, and they've come to all our vendors' fairs, and they always come here to speak to you and sponsor us. Come on, Martha.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Marty Madan. I'm the Vice President for Association Services at Center State Bank. We really love this group. We sponsor the vendor fair, part of the vendor fair every year, and we're happy to be here today, especially since Susie and Norma always have the coffee ready for us when we get here at 7:30 in the morning. So we'd like to thank you for that. Center State Bank, in case you haven't heard of us, is a $10 billion bank headquartered in Winter Haven, Florida. About 2 years ago, they bought First Southern Bank, some of you may know, and Gulfstream Business Bank. We've got 80 branches around the state. In Delray, the closest one is on Federal Highway, just a little bit north of Linton. I wanted to talk, do we have any board members here today? Okay. We have 5,000 homeowner associations in the Broward and Palm Beach area, and we specialize in homeowner association services. A couple things I wanted to talk to you briefly about are, number one, setting up a line of credit for future financial needs for the association in case of a hurricane situation where we're not lucky enough not to have damage. You can have the money ready right away if you need to do tree removal, paving, water repair, and that type of thing. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is credit cards. Effective July 1st, it's no longer legal for association board members or property managers to have debit cards. Center State has a no-fee credit card for board members and property managers. No board member is on the hook for the payments. It all goes back to the association. So, that's something that you might want to think about, especially if you have to run out and buy something instead of using the debit card, which you can't anymore, or getting petty cash. It's a much safer, secure way for you to get things for the association. We are really happy to be here. I'd like to now introduce my colleague, Michelle Adams, who's our market manager for Boca Raton, and she's going to talk to you about home equity lines of credit. Thanks for letting us come here, and it's great to see all of you.
Hi, good morning. Oh, I'm so sorry. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Adams. I manage both of our Boca Raton offices. One is in the Atrium Building in East Boca, and then my other office is near Palmetto and Powerline. I just want to briefly go over our home equity line of credit special. Okay, I'll speed it up. Okay, so we pay closing costs up to a line amount of $150,000. The line, and we also pay up to $200 towards the appraisal cost. This is a great line of credit. The term is 10 years. The payments are low, interest only, and the rate is variable and can be as low as prime, which is currently 4 1/4. So if you'd like any more information, I brought flyers with me. Please come see Marty and me in the back. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Martha. You've always been a supporter. And I said, with that, I'm now going to ask Lori to take over and introduce our speaker today. You have a very interesting program. And so, yeah, oh, there you are. Okay. Come on, Lori. You're so thin, I don't see you anymore.
Yes. Yes, President Bob. The man behind it all, yes. And what we do here at the Alliance is bring the most up-to-date programs, current information, and this is one of the fantastic ones this year with 3 very distinguished speakers. It took they're so distinguished that it wasn't even in our newsletter who they were, because they were so important we had to wait till the absolute last minute to get them. And when you hear their credentials, you will understand why. 3 parts. The first part will be explaining about the iguana, python, and Nile monitor, how they've come here to Florida. We're going to hear from the wildlife, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation. Then we're going to hear about python elimination program, and then we're going to hear about what we see in the canals. 3 distinguished speakers. We're going to start out with Sarah Funk, and she is the Non-Native Fish and Wildlife Program Coordinator for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Sarah leads a dedicated team whose mission is to minimize impacts of non-native wildlife on the state of Florida's environment, economy, and human health and safety. Bachelor's of Science from Miller's University, Master's of Science in Environmental Science from the Florida Gulf Coast University. For her graduate work, she studied the diet of the non-native spiny-tailed iguana in Collier County, but she also has an extensive experience in herpetology, sea turtle and terrapin reproductive biology, and stress impacts of oil spills on wildlife. Please help me welcome Sarah Funk.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you all about the FWC's Non-Native Fish and Wildlife Program. As Lori mentioned, my name is Sarah Funk, and I am the program coordinator based out of West Palm Beach. We're housed within what we call the Wildlife Impact Management section in FWC, and that section strives to minimize adverse impacts of conflict wildlife here in Florida, and that includes invasive species. So today I'm going to highlight 3 species in particular: the Burmese python, the Nile monitor, and the green iguana. Now, although invasive species are not a problem unique to the state of Florida, our subtropical climate has been conducive to their introduction, in some cases establishment, and even expansion across the state. And that can be for large lizards, large constrictor snakes, freshwater fish, and other species. The citizens of Florida, of course, especially here in South Florida, do frequently encounter these species and can have some conflict interactions. Almost 30,000 observations of non-native wildlife have been recorded in the state since 1924. Now, despite it being illegal to release any animal non-native to Florida, it's believed that most of these observations represent single individuals that may have been released or escaped from captivity in some way, shape, or form. Of these 600 species that are represented, however, we estimate that about 150 may have reproducing populations. An example of one of those more recent introductions is the Nile monitor, which you can see pictured here. Now, our program is charged with determining which of these non-native introductions will become established and potentially cause problems. So this slide is something that we see in a lot of the conferences and meetings that we go to. This is called the invasion curve. And the slide illustrates a big takeaway message here. As time goes on, an area that is infested by an invasive species will increase. And that means that eradication or complete removal of that species becomes less likely as management costs go up.
And these are things that we have to consider when we make our management decisions. Now, to this end, the primary activities that our program conducts include the list that you see here. Prevention, of course, is the #1 strategy that we want to use. This typically includes the development of rules and regulation for species that are considered risky for human health and safety, for the environment, or for the economy. We also utilize reports of non-native wildlife that we receive from the public through our 888 I've Got One hotline, website, and phone app. You can download it for free. We welcome these observations because they help us get a handle on where people are seeing things. Our staff are limited, and we can't be everywhere all the time, so we really do rely on these reports from the public to let us know what is going on and where. And so if we get a report and we identify an emerging issue that warrants response, we will employ what's called a rapid response. So the idea here is to get out into the field after something has been verified and remove it from the wild. Now, once a species that's invasive takes a strong foothold in the environment, we have to think more long-term control and management. But of course, education and outreach is our #1 thing that we really strive to do. And so we want to talk about prevention when we go to these education events. We push for responsible pet ownership. We are very supportive of that message. And we love to work with citizen science groups to inform folks just like you about these non-native species issues. So in the remaining slides, I'm going to highlight the 3 species where we use a variety or combination of these techniques to manage. So the Burmese python is probably the most well-known invasive species in the state of Florida. This is a large constrictor snake native to Southeast Asia. It's been documented in Florida as early as the 1970s. And as you can see, like I mentioned, they're a very large constrictor. They can impart some very serious impacts to our native wildlife. They have a broad diet, consume mammals, birds, and possibly even reptiles on occasion. They can tolerate a variety of habitats, but as you can see on the map, they're really spread across our vast natural areas here in South Florida. Now, one really interesting part of this species is how cryptic it is. And by cryptic, I mean it's very well camouflaged. Those are very, very hard to find. In fact, we've calculated detectability of this species to be less than 1%. So that means in an area where there's 100 pythons, only one of those is detected. That makes managing the species incredibly difficult, and there are limited tools that are available to us to actively and effectively remove this species. Now, in spite of the fact that they're difficult to locate, oops, let me go back. We don't have any population estimates for this species, but we have removed over 5,000 from Florida, or some have been observed as well. That's a pretty high number. So many agencies and organizations actively manage Burmese pythons, but the FWC has taken a lead role in coordination for these efforts. This past year, in fact, we hired 2 dedicated staff who work strictly on python management efforts, one of which is an interagency python management coordinator. We've also started some new programs and projects this year, including our Python contractor program and our Python pickup program. Both of those were launched in April, and when we developed our Python removal contractor program, we also collaborated and worked very closely with the South Florida Water Management District to assist them with developing their program. So the district is here today, and they're going to be telling you a bit about their efforts on that a little later. So it's important to note that private landowners can actually remove pythons or any non-native reptile from private property year-round, providing it's done legally and humanely. Additionally, the lethal take or removal of non-native reptiles is allowed without a permit or hunting license now on 22 of our public lands in South Florida. And to expand these response capabilities, we need more help. So we offer what are called Python patrol trainings across the state, typically here in South Florida a few times a month. And here, anyone, whether they're a natural resource worker, law enforcement, or a member of the public, can learn about identification, safe capture using an actual wild-caught python, and learn how to report it to the FWC. We've trained over 2,000 people with this program, and we continue to offer these trainings across the state. In 2016, I'm sure you all have heard about the Python Challenge that we hosted. We ramped up trainings during that effort as well to make sure that our folks are well educated and ready to roll when they're in the field. And to promote some of these other opportunities, we've also developed what's called our Python Pickup Program. And the idea here is to incentivize the public's efforts for invasive species removal. So what we're asking is that if folks are on the field and they in fact remove a python, that they let us know about it, because we can use those data to help us make informed management decisions. So all you need to do, if you catch a python, let us know about it. Send us a picture. You never know. You never know. There could be some experts in this room. Send us the GPS location, and when we get that and verify it, you have a chance to win monthly prize drawings. And at the end of the year, we'll be giving away a lifetime sportsman's license. So that's our grand prize. And so far, we've had 37 submissions from the general public, which is pretty phenomenal. So if you're interested in this, please visit our website. There's all kinds of information about all these different Python projects. The Nile monitor is another high-priority invasive species that our team actively controls. This is a large carnivorous lizard from sub-Saharan Africa. Again, just like the python, consumes a wide variety of prey. They're very aquatic, typically seen near the water, and they're considered established for breeding in Lee and Palm Beach County, with a disjunct population, of course. So in other words, the two are not really connected, we don't believe. There have been over 700 reports of Nile monitors across the state, 500 of which have resulted in either a dead on road report or an actual removal from the environment. And 80 of those reports of removals came directly from Palm Beach County since 2010. So this past year, we were able to hire another dedicated staff member, a brand new position, solely focused on Nile monitor removal in Palm Beach County, with the goal of local eradication. We are very hopeful for that. We occasionally also receive reports of what I call rogue individuals, so those monitors that are popping up in areas outside of the known breeding range. And of course, we will employ our early detection rapid response and respond to those as soon as we verify the report. And this approach allows us to minimize the spread of this species and try to contain, if not hopefully eradicate someday. So this map may be a little confusing at first, but the red line towards the top that's going east to west or horizontal is Southern Boulevard, and there's a canal system that parallels that road. This is where we focus the majority of our canal survey efforts. So we go out on boat and we look for these monitors, and when we see one, we remove it. Now, since our new dedicated staff person has started with us, those numbers and observations along this canal have dropped pretty drastically. So we are continuing to monitor the monitors, but we are expanding efforts into some of the adjacent canals to make sure that we are catching any new incipient populations that are popping up and responding to any other reports that we're getting. So the last species that I'm going to discuss today is the green iguana. Again, this is a large, non-native lizard. They're native to Central and South America. Now, they're a bit different from the two species I've already discussed because they're primarily herbivorous, and of course they can lay a lot of eggs, so they're a very successful invader. They were thought to be introduced into Florida through intentional and unintentional releases as early as the 1960s. They can become quite abundant in areas with suitable cover and where food is available. So those are really important facts to keep in mind. They populated some of the urban canal systems and surrounding communities. Now the next few slides are going to show kind of a time-lapse image of how iguana reports have accumulated over time. So the first reports were in Miami-Dade County, and as you can see, they've spread across South and Southwest Florida, in Monroe, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties, just to name a few. And so this is the current map. The red dots indicate observations of iguanas. You can see they're fairly dense on the southeast part of Florida and into the Keys. So what are the impacts from iguanas? Well, as I mentioned, they're herbivorous, so that means they love to eat vegetation, primarily fruits. They love flowers, but they may also occasionally feed on small prey items, animal prey items as well. They can impose negative impacts to our native wildlife, but most of those connections are still not fully understood and tend to be more of an indirect impact than a direct impact. So the concerns we hear from many of our constituents relate to iguana impact on personal property, such as digging into or burrowing into seawalls, consumption of ornamental plants, and then defecation on walkways, docks, and in pools. So this past year, our program decided to reevaluate our team's goals regarding green iguana management. And with input from our experts on our team and some of our partners, we collectively agreed to priority management goals for the state, one of which is to increase the awareness of the public about their options to reduce impacts of iguanas on private lands. The identification of these goals has helped us steer our new management strategies, and as time goes on, we're going to continue to assess and evaluate the successfulness of these programs. So one of the ways that we are going to try to meet that goal is by offering what we're calling technical assistance workshops. And we are planning to host a series of these in the Keys to get started. And in fact, really, this is the first one of its kind today here with you all. This is not the full technical assistance workshop that we are planning for the Keys in December, but it is at least a sneak peek at some of the information that we're putting together. So in the remaining slides, I want to offer you some of these techniques which can help deter iguanas from your property. It includes the list of items that you see here. So prevention, of course, is the #1 thing that you want to do on your property to keep iguanas off of it. Understanding why they are attracted to an area is really the first step. And they're going to be interested in 3 primary things: food, cover, and nesting habitat. So if you can remove those attractants from your property, the likelihood of an iguana infestation in your property can go down. So remember, feed pets indoors, don't leave food outside, clean up after you have a barbecue or a picnic. Anything like that can attract even more than iguanas, in fact, rats and raccoons as well. So the less food that's outside, the more likely it is that you will have fewer of these in your yard or on your property. You can also employ exclusion techniques, so basically barriers to keep iguanas out of certain areas that you don't want impacts to. So you can put together cages or screens, whether it be with hardware cloth or chicken wire or anything that makes sense for you and what your needs are. Wrap them around really important plants on your property. You can actually wrap sheet metal around trees to prevent climbing. Remember, iguanas are excellent climbers. So anything you can do to exclude them from an area that you want to protect, the better you'll be. Wire barriers and fences can also prevent digging and burrowing into seawalls or under your foundation or your deck. So consider installing these fences as well. I don't know if you can see from the photo here, but the wire is actually shaped in an L. So it's probably a couple feet tall and at least a foot down at that bottom part of the L. So remember, these guys are good climbers. So this is not a fence to put around your garden to keep them out because they'll climb right over it. This will be something that you can use to barricade an area, basically, from iguana burrowing, as long as it's associated with a structure. So you can see the image on the right is an example of how you can employ that. And remember, the bottom half of that L needs to be buried about a foot underground at least, because they are excellent diggers and they will try to burrow underneath it. And if you really want to get fancy, you could even consider installing electric fencing. That's certainly effective as well. And as I've said several times, they're excellent climbers. These are an arboreal species. They love to be in the trees. So if you have tree limbs or overhanging branches that allow the iguanas an access point or an unintentional bridge onto dwellings or buildings, that could be a problem. So trim back your branches, trim back your trees, remove those unintentional bridges. Another way to keep iguanas from your property is through the use of deterrents. So you can humanely haze or harass iguanas and basically spook them from your property. One way to do this, and it sounds unpleasant, but it's really not bad at all, is to spray them with a water hose until they leave. You can also install a water scarecrow, which is what's pictured here. It's a type of sprinkler. You can make loud noises, you can chase them off your property, bang pots and pans, play terribly loud music. There's all kinds of things you can do to make the atmosphere unwelcome. There's some other techniques that are out there. One example is to hang what I like to call the wind chime of CD-ROMs in your property. And what this does is it creates a whole series of different light reflections which can spook an iguana. But I've heard from quite a few folks who've tried to use this technique that it's not all that effective. So what you need to do is, if you try that technique, those CD wind chimes or whatever you want to call them need to be moved around. So it's very similar in nature to owls that some people put on roofs or on docks to scare birds away. You've got to move that owl around just like you have to move these CDs around, or these animals become accustomed to that. Probably one of the most effective techniques that you can use on your property, though, is habitat modification. So remember, those attractants, food, cover, and nesting habitat, are really critical to understanding how an iguana, thinks, or how it functions, how it works, and why they're coming to an area in the first place. So if you remove protective cover like dense thickets, rock piles, log piles, that's an area where iguanas might congregate for cover. So if you remove those log piles and rock piles, that's one less thing that they'd be attracted to. You can also consider filling vacant burrows that iguanas are using, but this can be a little tricky. You have to do it during the daytime so that the iguanas are likely to be out of the burrow, and you have to be 110% certain that there are no other animals in that burrow that could get trapped. That's the absolute last thing. Can you still hear me? There we go. Contrary to that, some have actually constructed habitat instead of removing it to attract iguanas to their property. And this is an interesting technique, and it probably won't work for everyone, but I wanted to offer it as a possible solution. You can construct artificial nesting sites out of sand piles or mulch piles. And females will be attracted to those sources, and you can actually focus reproduction efforts on those different substrates. So they will lay their eggs in these piles instead of under your seawall or in your garden or under your home. And you can easily collect the eggs, put them in a plastic sealed bag, and very easily dispose of them. So that gets rid of the next generation, essentially. And finally, you can avoid planting vegetation that iguanas love to eat. Hibiscus, orchids, roses, this whole long list on the right side of your screen. It's also available in our brochure in the back. These are plants that iguanas prefer. So if you don't have that food source, that will help. What you could plant instead are some of these more iguana-resistant plants. That could include milkweed, pentas, oleanders, citrus. There are quite a few really lovely options there. They do prefer bright yellow and very oftentimes bright red flowers, sometimes orange as well, and fruits for that matter. So keep that in mind when you're planting. They love young leaf growth. That is where the highest protein content is, that is the most tender growth, and that is where the least cellulose content is. So it's very easy for them to digest those young leaves. So any kind of plant with thick, tough, or waxy leaves, generally speaking, can deter an iguana from consuming them. Again, they're not as palatable, they don't taste as good, and they're much more difficult to digest. So I hope you found this information helpful. There's so much that our team does, and I can't cover it all in 15 minutes, but I really am just grateful that I was able to speak with you all today. We have additional information in the back. We have an FWC table with Carolyn. Please feel free to visit the table, take some of the outreach materials we have, and we will continue to do our part to reach out to these citizen science groups and communities where there's need. We want to continue to offer education and training, technical assistance workshops, because we want our public engaged in invasive species management. The takeaway here, and I say this all the time, is it takes a village. We can't do this alone, we can't be everywhere all the time, so we need your help to manage all these different species. So thank you all. I look forward to the upcoming presentation.
Thank you. That really was terrific. A great beginning to this program. We're going to go on to now a little closer to home. This is the Florida Fish and Wildlife. Now we're going to come to South Florida Water Management District. Rory Feeney currently serves as the Bureau Chief of Land Resources at the South Florida Water Management District. Since 2015, he's been responsible for the vegetation, management, and land stewardship of the district's 2,000 miles of canals, stormwater treatment areas, and upland habitats across 16 counties. He previously worked at the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida as the Fish and Wildlife Director for 9 years and Water Resources Manager for 6 years. He won the Partners in Conservation Award by the Department of the Interior and nominated for the Presidential Global Climate Change Adaptation Committee. He brings 20 years of field experience and the ability to work on complex projects among state and federal agencies. Please help me welcome Rory Feeney.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. Is everything working? Great. So before I jump into the district's Python elimination program, I'm just going to give you a little bit more information on the Burmese python itself. So for decades, Florida's been plagued with an invasive exotic reptile that has found a home uniquely similar to its native home range. The Everglades ecosystem, with its subtropical ecosystem, shallow waters, and abundance of prey, has found a home very suitable for the Burmese python. And you can see in this photo here, top left photo is from Southeast Asia, and the bottom right is the Florida Everglades. Very similar. In the 1990s, observations of Burmese pythons were few and far between. But after Hurricane Andrew in 1992, those numbers started to increase because a pet facility was destroyed as a result of the hurricane, and also people had Burmese pythons as pets. And as they get larger, it becomes harder and harder to take care of those pets. Taking care of a 5-foot python is one thing. Taking care of a 10-foot python, 15-foot python, well, that's a lot of work. So often these pet owners release these snakes into the Everglades. There was a sharp increase in the number of observations of pythons and pythons removed after year 2000. The sharp incline and increase in python removal and observation, as you can see here after 2004, can really be attributed to the high fecundity rate, the high productivity rate of female snakes. As Sarah mentioned, each female snake is capable of bearing 40, 50 eggs, in some cases as many as 80 or 90 eggs. That decrease in 2011 can be attributed to the cold front that we had back in 2009. So it helped knock down the numbers, but you can see the population started to increase once again. I'm going to show you some photos of pythons removed from the glades over the years. This python was removed from the C111 basin, that's in South Dade. This very large python was removed from Water Conservation Area 3B. That's out in the Everglades in Dade County. That particular python had a full-grown white-tailed deer in its stomach. And more recently, this snake was found at the beginning of 2007 on one of our water quality stations at Biscayne Bay. So that station is quite a distance off of land, and that's in salt water. So that tells me that Burmese pythons have become pretty adaptable to a saline environment. Does that mean they're going to make home in salt water? No, but that means that they can adapt to, at least in the short term, a saline environment. And this slide depicts the distribution of Burmese python sightings from 2008 to about a year or two ago. The highest density of pythons found are within Dade County, the Everglades, Tamiami Trail. But you can see those dots are spread out across Collier County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. Estimates of pythons range anywhere. As Sarah mentioned, it's very hard to get population estimates, but it can be anywhere between 10,000 to over 100,000 pythons in the wild. The problem with that is, by the time pythons reach 5 to 7 years old, they're 13 feet long. At that point, they've already consumed upwards of 200 species of animals. Raccoons, otters, bobcats, all different types of birds, and even alligators and white-tailed deer. They've really thrown the balance of the ecosystem off, and we really can't afford for that to happen. So what are we going to do about it? You know, we've had lots of great programs over the years. We've had outreach and education. We've had trapping efforts. We've had genetic studies, and all of them have been successful in some form or fashion. But let's try something different. So the Water Management District directed us to create a program, an incentive program, back in March of this year, where we took 25 highly trained, highly motivated individuals and compensated them for their efforts at removing pythons by the hour to help pay for their fuel, their gas, their time out in the field. And then, if they find a snake and they bring a snake to us, get paid for that snake that's been removed and destroyed by the foot. So the larger the snake you get, the more money you get from the bounty, essentially. So a 7-foot snake would get you $125, and a 14-foot snake would get you $250. So once people started hearing about that, the news went viral. So here's a quick video of. Let's see if this works. Oh, hang on. The volume would help, but we won't get volume right now. But the news covered this all over the country. When we put out the news for this program, we got applicants from South America, Asia, Europe. We got 1,000 applicants for the program within 6-7 days, but we had to narrow it down to the most highly trained individuals for the program. Public awareness has been great. We've had Lieutenant Governor Carlos Cantera come down from Tallahassee to be involved in the program. He actually helped catch this very large 15-foot python with one of our hunters. Congressman Francis Rooney over on the West Coast did some python hunting with one of our contractors and removed a snake. And even Chef Gordon Ramsay went out and caught 3 snakes with our hunters just a couple months ago. And caught them up, cooked them out in the field, and aired on TV as well on one of his shows. Although I don't recommend eating pythons, they have high levels of mercury, but just because he's that type of guy, he wanted to do it. So if you lay all the snakes end to end that we've caught since March, the total length would be 4,059 feet. We've got 597 snakes since March. So that 4,000 feet end to end is equivalent to 3 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other and weighing over 8,000 pounds. This chart shows just how effective our python hunters have been. This is a running total of all the snakes that have been caught in 2 phases. The program's been broken up into 2 phases. Phase 1, Phase 2. First phase on the left shows the increase, a little break in the program, and then onward to today. This chart shows the size distribution. How large have the snakes been? Well, during the first phase, they were on the larger size. It was colder back then, and it was easier to find the larger snakes basking out in the sun. But the second phase, as it got warmer, we started finding a smaller size class. So a lot of the snakes we've been bringing in have been less than 4 feet. But that's still good, because every small snake you take out of the wild, so all those more species that don't get consumed, there's 200 species that are consumed by the time those small snakes reach 5 to 7 years old. 61% of the snakes have been caught at night. 12%, and the rest of the percents have been, early morning, afternoon, but our hunters have been most successful at night. Most of the snakes have been caught in Dade County, western Dade County, an area we call the L28 tieback, the L67, the L30, and then extreme South Dade, a place called the Rocky and Southern Glades Wildlife Management Areas. And these are some of the faces of the program. We do have men and women in the program, young and old. Donna Khalil, Tom Rahill, Kyle Pensington. Kyle was the guy who went out with Gordon Ramsay and caught the snakes with him. Dusty Wildman Crum. A lot of characters came out of this program. He caught nearly a 17-foot snake a few months back. Michael Varkarse, he's caught over 50 snakes. Pat Campbell. And we work with a group called the Swamp Apes Organization. It's made up of military veterans that help other veterans with post-traumatic stress syndromes. And I want to thank our program participants, our hunters, and the hardworking team at the South Florida Water Management District. and our partners at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And before I finish, just want to show you just the perspective, the size. You know, we're saying how big 10 feet is, 15-foot snake, but let me just, if you've got a second, roll out a snake that's pretty big. That's skin. Sorry. No need to run. It's not going to go after this.
Oh, that's the skin of it.
So that's pretty big. Right? So the ones that we've caught in the field have been actually larger than this. So having thousands of these out in the Everglades is really tipping the balance of the ecosystem. So we'll leave this out here in case you guys want to come up and touch it. And if you want more information on our program, feel free to go to our website. Feel free to go to our website at sfwnd.gov. Thank you.
Yes, that is so cool. Thank you so much. What we're going to do is we have cards on the tables in case you have any questions. Every table's got a few cards on the end. If you have a question to ask our speakers, please make sure President Bob gets the card, and he's going to be finishing up the program today, and he'll be asking any questions of the speakers. Wow, that was exciting. Now, a little even closer to home now, we have Lake Worth Drainage District. The third speaker is very important. We all must be very, very nice to Tommy Stroud. The reason why, he's helping us to widen Atlantic Avenue. Okay, we need a bigger applause than that, come on. Yeah, that's what we need. Lake Worth Drainage District is helping along with Kings Point, and we've got the DOT, and we've got the county, Florida DOT and the county, all coming together to try to work on widening Atlantic Avenue as soon as possible to keep up with all of the construction development that's going on and that we're going to have in the future. So Tommy Stroud is the district engineer and director of operations and maintenance. He oversees the water control operations, permitting, and canal maintenance activities for the district's water management system. He has more than 35 years of experience in civil, environmental, and water resource engineering in the public and private sectors. Prior to joining the district in April 2014, he most recently served as the Assistant Executive Director of Operations, Maintenance, and Construction for the South Florida Water Management District. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Oceanographic Technology from Florida Institute of Technology and is a professional engineer registered in the state of Florida since 1983. He's going to be telling us what the boots on the ground, what we actually see in the canal, what Lake Worth Drainage District sees in the canal. Please help me welcome Tommy Stroud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bitter. Appreciate it. Let me just get this presentation going.
You're right there, on the bottom.
Oh, right here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning. It's an honor to be here. I'm, again, the Director of Operation and Maintenance and District Engineer for the Lake Worth Drainage District. And we're going to talk about what it's like for you all to live in the vicinity of our canal network. Some of you may live right adjacent to it. And more importantly, as a resident of South Florida, the kind of things you expect to see with regard to the environment. Just briefly, I want to tell you about the Lake Worth Drainage District. It's a special taxing district. It was established by the Florida legislature 100 years ago. it has a sophisticated canal network, about 500 miles of canals, about 1,000 miles of right-of-way that we manage. And the district is governed by a 5-member board of supervisors elected by property owners. We have a staff of around 90 people that really the function is to maintain this network of canals and water control structures, primarily for the purpose of drainage and for water supply. We weren't given the authority by the legislature to do really anything else, so we don't maintain or manage roadways, parks, any other types of things that you would expect local governments, and we don't have the authority to manage wildlife, although a lot of wildlife exists obviously in our canal network, and that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. We're bordered on the west by what's known as the Arthur R. Marshall-Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge. Most of you will know it as the Everglades, and it literally is just west of here. On the east, we're bordered by the Atlantic Ocean and Lake Worth Lagoon. So you have these two areas of extraordinary natural resources on either side of the area that we occupy and populate. And the Lake Worth Drainage District manages the canal network within that area. Obviously, when you dig a canal and you have water in it, it's a great place for wildlife. And as I mentioned, you got these two extraordinary natural areas on either side. And so the populations of wildlife seem to mimic, to some degree, what you see in the Everglades and the other natural areas. Most of the animals that we have are harmless, but some can become a nuisance, as you heard earlier this morning. Some can even be dangerous. So in urbanized areas, as a resident next to these canals, you got to expect you're going to see different species of wildlife. You probably should understand which ones are nuisance, which ones are friendly, and which ones you probably need to stay away from. We have nuisance wildlife. Muscovy ducks are abundant in the canals, and they can create a mess, but a lot of them are pretty friendly, and you can feed them, and they're not a big deal. Similar situation with raccoons and otters. Again, those are native species, and they occupy our canals, but they can create problems for adjacent residences. We do have, obviously, wildlife that can be dangerous. Snapping turtles, if you get tangled up with one of those, they can bite and can really hurt you. Alligators, obviously, can be dangerous. We don't see a lot of them in our canals, but they do occupy them, and it's good to stay away from them. Don't feed them, because you don't want them to get used to or become accustomed to human interaction. And of course, snakes. Many of them are not venomous, but there are a few venomous species that inhabit our canal rights of way that you need to be particularly careful with. We have less common types of wildlife. Manatees, even though they're primarily a marine species, they exist in fresh water. They like the interface between freshwater and saltwater. And we get a lot of birds, deer, and other animals that occasionally migrate from the Everglades into our canal network. We've seen just about everything in our canal. Unfortunately, we've had some alligators interact with our water control structures and become caught and unintentionally killed. We have endangered species such as gopher tortoises that occupy our right-of-way, and everything from land crabs to kites and hawks and all kinds of bird life. Some of it is natural, some of it's not. Peacocks, we've seen those. Insects, barn owls, just about everything you would expect to see in the Everglades, you're going to see at some point in our canal. And of course, as we've talked about, iguanas frequent our rights of way, mainly because, as you heard from the previous speakers, iguanas, they like to kind of be away from people. So our rights of way are kind of quiet. We don't have a lot of traffic on them. And they're right adjacent to residences who grow ornamental vegetation and things that the iguanas like to eat. So the combination of the urban environment with our canal network, it's kind of an ideal place for these species to proliferate. And of course, as you heard earlier, the Nile monitor is sort of a newly introduced species that we're paying attention to, particularly because they can be aggressive. and their bites can be dangerous. We see them again in the northern portion of our district, in the canal network there. We cooperate with South Florida Water Management District and the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission on their programs to deal with that. So the bottom line is, respect to wildlife is they do play a role in the ecosystem. They do inhabit our canal network and other natural areas. Please don't feed them or entice them to your property, because you really don't want wildlife to become accustomed to human activity. If you encounter dangerous or venomous animals, get away from them. Call animal control, and they can help you here in Palm Beach County. And of course, don't leave children or small pets unattended near the canals. So, obviously, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them, and look forward to talking to you and helping you with Atlantic Boulevard.
Thank you, guys. Great presentation. We appreciate it. I would appreciate it. And so, in closing, I want to tell you that we're having a tax collector at our next meeting and the IRS. So bring your tax forms here, they'll help you. No, it's a joke. And so we welcome you all. Hope you'll be back to see us next month. And I thank all our speakers. It was wonderful. And next meeting, we're also going to have the people here speaking about Atlantic Avenue and what they're planning to do. So come on and see us. Thank you all for appearing here tonight, and we thank our speakers, and we'll see you next month. God willing. Bye.